Hello, dear ones. Happy to be back with you, and happy that Brian is still with us. We have him for one more day here, which is very cool. And so we're going to continue with Peace Pilgrim Steps Towards Inner Peace. This is episode part 3, and there are 2 other parts that are already here. And so you'll find those on the Facebook feed and eventually on the YouTube, Peace Swami YouTube feed. And so now we've covered some of the background of peace as a reality, and the need for inner peace in order to be peaceful outwardly, in order to have or to be at peace when things happen in the world and in our lives. And so yesterday, the preparations, and now we're going to focus on the purifications. We've mentioned there are 12 steps that Dear Peace has identified for us, and again, no particular order. The purifications are really what we consider to be the work, and this is where we consciously choose the path of transformation in order to transform the intermediate nature, the mind, the mental, emotional natures, the how we see and how we deal with, in order to uplift ourselves as our part in uplifting the world and the world experience. So let's begin. There are 4 purifications, just as there were 4 preparations. So Brian, if you would please read the first and we'll discuss.
Happy to. Purification number 1. Purification of the bodily temple. Are you free from all bad habits? In your diet, do you stress the vital foods, the fruits, whole grains, vegetables, and nuts? Do you get to bed early and get enough sleep? Do you get plenty of fresh air, sunshine, exercise, and contact with nature? If you can answer yes to all of these questions, you have gone a long way toward purification of the bodily temple.
Oh, thank you. Okay, there are a few points here that we should discuss and do our best to work with. The first one is, right up front, do you hear the phrase that she's using for the body? She calls it the bodily temple. Yeah. Here's the thing, and this is often dealt with, and it's so important. You're not the body. You're not the body. We watched yesterday evening, Brian and I, the documentary with Peace Pilgrim. So I had the opportunity to watch it again. And I don't know how many times, but it's a love affair of the heart, the deep heart, the real heart of peace. Such a pure embodiment of peace. And we get, again, a little bit of a flavor of it. Yeah? And love and kindness and compassion and just so. And so peace, they had some snippets of her talks and sharings in the documentary. And the documentary link is here, by the way. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It's 1 hour and a beautiful investment in peace, in our lives, in the quality of our lives. Such a good inspiration and guide. So she's asked, how old are you at some point? And she answers that she says she had to teach herself to stop counting, and she's so grateful for this. Yeah. And linked to that is this related question where she clarifies. She says, I am not the body. This body is the clay shell. I am that which animates the body. And having become clear on this, then she says, I am ageless and in radiant health. And of course, she's speaking of the essence, the real us, which we could call spirit or soul. It's not the word, but they're pointers. So you're not the body. Now, we will often, in yoga, we often get exposed to this in many of the different traditions. And does that mean that the body is unimportant? Absolutely not. The body is so important. It's just that it's not who we are. That's all. It doesn't mean denigrate the body, don't care about the body. It doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean that I'm not the body. Here, I'll share an example. And the body is not exactly a car, but it's pretty darn close because it carries us around. And so if you look at your relationship with your car, if you have a car, if you have a family vehicle like that, and do you need to care for the car? If you say, well, I'm not the car, so it doesn't make any difference, how well will that work out? Yes?
Not great.
Not great, because it'll run out of gas, and then it's like, what? And that's being addressed here. It runs out of gas. It has a propensity to run out of gas. It needs refills. Yeah. And if you don't change the oil, how about that? If you don't keep water and antifreeze in the radiator, what about that? And so in this case, she's actually elevating the body from the car, though. She's saying this is the temple from the perspective of, let's say that we came here for a purpose. Let's say that we came into this body for a purpose, and the purpose is actually to find happiness and freedom. Everybody's in it for this. It's just we're trying to find it in the world. Well, we can't find it in the world. The world doesn't exist to make us happy, not in that way. It exists to challenge us. This is a beautiful quote from Eckhart Tolle. So it exists for our benefit in this way, but the happiness that we're seeking, the fullness that we're seeking, is actually indwelling. It's who we are. Just allow for it. If we just allow for it, don't believe it. Investigate it. Investigate everything. Don't believe so easily. But if you allow for it, then you can work with it. And so if it's true then that I came here in order to work out my happiness, my freedom, my fullness, to work it out, and that life's going to give me the opportunities that I need to work it out, then this body is the temple. It's the place that I've come in order to find the divine, which is my own highest self, like this. And so body's very important. It's not me. In fact, from this perspective, I'd say it's so much better than being me, because there's a point to my life and I'm not subject to the stuff that happens to me. That's pretty darn amazing when we get it. Yeah? I'm not a victim. I don't have to be a victim. The things that happen to me, they don't define me. They happen to the body, or they happen to the mind. They happen to the emotional nature, like this. And then we have the opportunity to choose what to do about it. And yeah, we can choose to hit back, but we should be aware of what that does. How does that affect the body? How does that affect the psyche, like that? So here she's sharing this, and I'm saying it's better because there are things that I don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry about death, for example, because it's just the body that dies. And I don't have to worry about whether the bones stay together or not. If they break, they break, and then they heal, and I'm not actually in charge of that part of it. But what I do want to concern myself with is what she's sharing, which is how to care for it well, and how to do it in a way that I don't become attached to it, get caught up in fear and anxiety and anger and all of this. Of course, we'll continue to deal with these as we take the steps. So she's helping us to see a different way to relate to the body. And then, of course, she's sharing these beautiful approaches, and a lot of these are in Western culture. We're aware of them. It's not necessarily that we do them, but we're aware of them in Western culture. We're aware of healthy foods and like this. The challenge for us, of course, is this relationship with the body and seeing it in a more healthy way. The other part that I'll comment on is plenty of rest or plenty of sleep. Do you get enough sleep? And of course, we're dealing with both the amount of sleep and the quality of sleep. And amount of sleep is important. What's important is enough, and enough meaning both quantity and quality. The more quality, the less quantity is required. Yeah? The more we find ways to sleep well without carrying anxiety and stress and such into the sleep, then the more we find that maybe not as much is required. And as we, certainly that is the case that this happens. Okay. So, question on the first?
No, just a comment that occurs to me is how beautifully interconnected these are. Like, I'm thinking of this very simple direction to, eat well and do these things that we know how to do. And so, okay, what prevents us from doing this? Desires, certainly. But one thing I think that can get in the way is a cluttered life, where we want to eat well, but,
yes,
we think that prevents it. So it's just reinforcing that all these steps are taken together.
Which is related to the preparations discussion. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Very good. Yes. Okay. Number 2, please.
Preparation number 2.
Purification.
Oh, I'm sorry. Purification number 2. Purification of the thoughts. It is not enough to do right things and say right things. You must also think right things. Positive thoughts can be powerful influences for good. Negative thoughts can make you physically ill. Be sure there is no unpeaceful situation between yourself and any other human being. For only when you have ceased to harbor unkind thoughts can you attain inner harmony.
Oh, thank you. Oh my goodness, this is a big one. This is really the thing in terms of sadhana, meaning spiritual practice or practices to purify the temple. Temple's not just the bodily temple, it's also the mental, emotional temple. And again, we would say that you're not the thoughts and you're not the feelings. But these are very important guides for us in terms of how we're doing on the path and the nature of the thoughts that are arising. There's another point here that needs to be made, and that is, it might not seem like it, but it's very, very helpful to recognize that there's a difference between thoughts and thinking. They're not actually the same thing. And I get it's like we're running on overdrive and we're not examining our lives. And to the extent that we're not examining either the outer life or what's happening inside in the mental, emotional part of my life, it'll be hard to catch, but it's necessary to catch it. Thoughts arise. Here, I'll give you an example. There's this relationship, the Sanskrit words nama, rupa, name, and form. There's a relationship between name and form. And you'll see it in the mind. You'll see that okay, Swami right now is looking into the library at the clock. Yeah? So here's what happens. I look at it, and the word clock might arise in the mind, but then definitely what will arise is 5 minutes till 11 or something like that. Yeah. Now that's a thought that arises in the mind. Does that make any sense? Mm-hmm. So I look at it. I simply look at it. I use the eyes to focus on it, and that thought arises. Mm-hmm. We were using a fictitious character the other day, Harry, and we gave Harry some attributes for one of our lessons, and the attributes were not so pleasant. And so here, let's say that we have a Harry in our life, some character that we're having a big challenge with, that we haven't figured out how to relate to in a compassionate way. Let's just say that. And so look at what happens. We see Harry, or we hear Harry, or we imagine Harry. We think about Harry. And then look at the thoughts that will come, the associated thoughts that will come. And they may not be so attractive. Yeah. And in fact, if we think about it long enough, we may feel tension in the body, this discord, this disharmony or inharmony, yeah? And so these are thoughts, and the thoughts arise, and there's a conditioned aspect. They're primarily conditioned, subconscious, unconscious. They arise based upon prior choices that we made and based upon prior experiences and how we dealt with those prior experiences like that. Okay. So, and this is a beautiful deep dive, and it's a very important deep dive because this relates to how to change our thoughts, how to see our thoughts clearly, and how to change them. We have in our Peace Swami YouTube library, we have a beautiful exploration through Swami Shivananda's little book, Thought Power. And that exploration is so important and so helpful for everyone in terms of understanding this. So these are thoughts. The thoughts arise. What does it mean then to think a thought? Well, it's the relationship that we have with the thought. We develop a relationship, and the relationship is maybe I mentally repeat it. That doesn't just happen. It has to do with me being aware of the thought, putting an importance on the thought because it arose or whatever, or because it's something I like or it's something that I don't like. I have an affinity towards it. So here, our dear Harry could be an example of this. I don't have an affinity. I don't particularly care for Harry. That's my idea about it. That's what's in my mind. I don't like Harry. That's a mental view. That's a thought that's arising. But I can think it, which is I can repeat it. I really don't like him. He's an idiot. I really don't. Every time I see him, now you're thinking. And those thoughts are disgusting because they change and putrefy our inner life, our inner world. They make it sick.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're intentionally getting sick. It's not, but the thoughts are so important. Peace Pilgrim would say this. She says, if you knew the power of your thoughts, you would never think a negative thought again. You wouldn't repeat it. It might arise and you'd stand back from it. You'd get away from not the person, the thought. You would beat feet to get away from that thought. There's a beautiful Rumi quote, and the quote is, fear is the cheapest room in the house, and you deserve better. So there's the relationship that we develop with these thoughts, and we can think it. In other words, we can repeat it. We can contemplate it. We can consider it. We can reflect on it. We can consider and reflect on all the terrible things that Harry has done, and our world will just get darker and darker. Or we can think about something else. We can take a practice of mantra and repeat the mantra, which is one of the great practices of yoga. We can change, and within Raja Yoga, we have this technique of what's called Pratipaksha Bhavana. It is changing a negative limited thought, replacing it with a positive thought. Thinking about something that you appreciate, that you have an affinity towards, to get the mind off. Meditation practice, engaging in meditation practice, something to change it. And this is also a relationship with the thoughts. And we would say, this is actually the way that we change the thoughts. So we can think it, we can contemplate it, we can consider it, we can reflect on it, we can make friends with the thoughts, and we would say make friends with positive, beneficial, loving, compassionate, kind, open thoughts. This is a practice. Don't make friends with the ones that are very limited and very much rooted in anger and separation and judgment and all of these habituated in greed and lust and all of these, because making friends with these make our lives darker. And further, we can harbor them. And oh my God, and Peace Pilgrim used this word about harboring. Here, she said, only when you have ceased to harbor unkind thoughts can you attain inner harmony. Harbor is, we have the sense of the meaning of the word harbor? Mm-hmm. To give harbor to give safe harbor, like to create a place in your life where it's your comfortable friend. It's your special friend, and you give it harbor. Oh my God. Yeah, I lived this dream. I feel like we all have. And it's a nightmare, isn't it? So it's very important to see this. And then we can identify with it. And for example, we would say you're neither man nor woman. You're wearing the clothing of a man or a woman, and it's mental, emotional, and physical clothing. It's an experience that you're having. And yet you are actually beyond the body and beyond the mind and so let me be a little careful, but maybe you've played other roles before. We have within our family, within our extended family, one dear soul that during one of our retreats made a point of, she had an aha, and it was like she had to unburden herself of the fact that her son, when he was very young, told her that he was her mother in a prior birth and told her how, before he came into her womb, he had selected her to be his mother in this birth. And so if we allow for this, we'll see thoughts are the thing. We take a little more time with this because this is really what we need to be able to get to is the more we're able to see our thoughts and make choices about what types of thoughts to make friends with, to encourage, to bring into, how to relate to the things that happen. You know, let's say something happens, and you can pick anything. Whatever it is that happens, someone in this world will have the mental approach to it to say it's a problem. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Anything. And someone will have the mental approach to it to say it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Hey, the thing that happens has both seeds within it. It is, if we take it as a problem, it is a problem, and we'll get stuck in it, and we'll create a whole nasty story about it. And it will be a big problem, and it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we'll probably carry it out of this birth. Or we can take it as an opportunity. And if we take it as an opportunity, then it's a completely different thought pattern, isn't it? Completely different relationship with it. Now it's about, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from it? Yeah? Do you see how just this thought approach, how it changes the nature of our life experience? And so this is it. This is really the central work of yoga, and here the central work of this work of peace that's being shared.
So when we're working to change this relationship with thought from destructive to constructive thoughts, can you speak to, we don't want to suppress the thought, but we want to be firm with changing it. Is that
Correct. It's Peace refers to, she uses the term subordinate, which we'll come back to, which might sound bad, but it's not. It just means to reorder and to place the lower natures into a place where they're subordinate and serving the higher natures. So we don't want to suppress these limited negative thoughts. The best way to deal with them is to change them. The thoughts that are arising, or to ignore them. There are in our thought power, and we have within the thought power series, there are 16 different techniques in yoga to deal with thoughts and to change the relationship with the thoughts, or to change the thoughts. None of them have to do with getting angry at yourself or screaming at the thought. None of them. We actually want to make friends with the mind, make friends with ourselves, and that doesn't mean doing whatever thought arises. That means a friend has the best interest at heart of the one that's being befriended. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so if we're to be a friend of ourselves or a friend of the mind and work to train the mind so that it can be a friend of ours, then we'll do what's beneficial for ourselves, for all even for the mind. From here, we would say this mind is not who we are. It's actually our first child. And we train the mind to think, to bring the types of thoughts that will uplift our life, that will help to open our lives and help us to be of service and benefit to all, in the same way that we would train a child. And that is, when the mind burps up the wrong stuff, we can pat it and we can say, oh, my dear, let's think of this instead. Let's change this and think of this. Let's come to this thought neighborhood. Let's put this into practice, yeah?
And it's a decision, but it's also catching it. So when Harry arises and the thoughts come,
yes,
they can grab you so fast, and before you know it, you're from the thought arising into the thinking. So perhaps the question here is about getting space from that reactive tendency into an appropriate response.
Yes. And there are two minds. You know how we say I'm of two minds on the subject? Mm-hmm. There is, within the one greater mind, there is the subconscious mind, the reactive nature or instinctive nature. And there is the conscious mind, the intellect, what we call buddhi in Sanskrit. Mm-hmm. And that conscious mind is currently present. The conscious mind, the intellect, is the rationating capacity within the mind, the ability to reflect and to figure things out. Now, just like this conversation that we're having right now, if you're listening and participating, then your conscious mind is active and you're reflecting, you're considering, you're making choices. You're saying, this is what I would like to do. Yes, I've seen this happen. I'd like to apply this technique or that technique, etc. Okay, conscious mind. It's the power of choice within us, the ability to choose, ultimately to choose my destiny. The reactive mind is reacting, and it's a program. It's like when you turn your smartphone on, it goes through a program, it does a certain thing, and then it presents you, and it happens very quickly, and then it presents you the picture. Well, until you change the picture, here I've got a picture on my phone of Swami Ramasrupananda, and here I'm going to show you. This is dear Swami Ramasrupananda. And Swami Ramasrupanandaji left his body a few years ago, but such a dear inspiration for this Swami that I like having his image on my phone because, well, he's an angel. And who wouldn't want to see an angel when they look at their phone? Oh. And that was a conscious choice. But now the phone does it every time. That's the reactive nature. Uh-huh. And so until I change it, if I choose to change it, then I'll change it. And maybe it's hard for me to change it. And that's what we're dealing with in the reactive nature. It's the reactive nature that tells you the story of Harry. Yeah. It bubbles up. You just see Harry and all this stuff comes forward. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now you get to choose what to do about it. But most likely what happens is it comes up and there's an intensity with it and you fall and you lose yourself and it's like pop. Oh my God, I didn't do what I wanted to do. I didn't think of Harry the way I wanted to think of Harry. I thought of Harry the old way, and before I knew it, I lost myself, and now I'm on all this thing about recrimination, and I can't believe he did this, and he did that, and so what happens? What happens is, and this is so important to realize, I took a vow. I said, consciously, I'm going to practice a different relationship with Harry. Mm-hmm. I'm going to practice, I'm going to relate to things differently. Instead of relating to them as problems, I'm going to relate to them as opportunities. Whatever choice you make, you take a vow. You say, this is what I'm going to do now. Okay. And now life will give you a situation. Mm. And we say it's a test. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. I resolved, and then sometime, probably not very long, life will give me an opportunity to fall down and to rise up. Oh. And what will invariably happen is the reactive thought will bubble up.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, and somewhere in Peace Swami's videos, you'll find the banana story. I probably will lose myself early on.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll bubble up and I'll lose myself. I'll forget what I was trying to do. But here's what happens is sometime after, I don't know how long, but usually within a day or so, I will be shown that I lost myself. Mm-hmm. We call this our conscience. Mm-hmm. Let our conscience be our guide. My conscience, my intuitive nature will give me an image that helps me to say, oh my God, I lost myself. Do you know what we're talking about here? You don't, right? It always happens. And now you have the same choice again. Mm-hmm. And now it's the same choice, which is, what do I do about it? Invariably, these choices are the power of life. If you choose, again, no, I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to correct it. I'm going to... Mm-hmm. I was sharing something from one of our family with dear Brian yesterday, and it's just so thrilling because the approach that he was taking was exactly this. Every now and then he falls down in this particular area, but he tells himself now, this will change. I will be successful. Yeah. I will, because I will make the right choices. When I have the opportunity once again to come back to conscious choice and I have my wits about me again, I will make the right choice. And so that's the opportunity. If we make the right choice, then in some time, the habit changes. What bubbles up is not this terrible Harry. It is the Harry that I have compassion for, the Harry that I have chosen to love. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And Harry's dealing with some difficult stuff in his life, and I pray that Harry will get through it and will come through it beautifully and will be free and happy. Yeah? Just like I pray for everyone that this would be the case, that everyone will get through all of the difficulties that they're dealing with. They'll find the way of peace, the way of love, the way of freedom within themselves at their core. They'll learn how to honor it, how to live in it, and how to be completely free. And so this is what I would want for an approach, and I can cultivate it. And this is in the thought. So it's like, sometimes we'll use the example, if we get a splinter in our finger, how do we get it out? We use another splinter to pull it out. And here it's using the mind, conscious mind, in order to purify, in order to make choices, in order to purify the subconscious, the reactive natures.
Ready for number 3?
Please.
Number 3.
Are you ready for number 3?
Purification of the desires. Since you are here to get yourself into harmony with the laws that govern human conduct and with your part in the scheme of things, your desires should be focused in this direction.
I'd just like to add this. Also, when we come into yoga or any spiritual path, the religious path, spiritual paths, they're all about rising up within ourselves to find, to reach, to embody the highest natures, the pure love, the pure compassion, the pure peace, the pure freedom, which is your own highest nature. And the saints in the different traditions, such as Peace Pilgrim, they're just showing us who we are and helping to point to how do we unwrap, how do we get out of this chrysalis and become the butterfly that we actually are. And so we'll be exposed to this and we'll hear that desires are a problem. And I would just like to put some light on it and say that desires are not a problem. They're not the problem. The issue more for us is what kind of desires do I have? Because whatever desire I have, and especially whatever is my most salient desire, the most important desire for me, that's what I shall do. I shall do it. I shall be successful. The techniques that we were just discussing, our action follows our thoughts. And so if we fall down literally or figuratively, the seeds were already in the mind, already in the thoughts. And so if I have that affair in actual fact or whatever it is, it's because it had already happened in the mind. It already was picturing it and harboring it and all of this stuff, and then it's bound to happen. And so, and that now relates back to desire. Whatever I desire, as long as I stick with it, I'll get it. Now, what will I learn? Well, if it's a prurient thing, if it's a thing about me satisfying myself by getting a thing, well, we will eventually learn that that doesn't work. We will. Sooner the better, my dear one. Sooner the better. I can achieve things. I can achieve whatever I choose to achieve, given the clear discernment, strong intellect, strong choice, strong will, and forbearance, seeing it through. Then I'll get there. It might take births, it might take multiple births, but I'll get there. So if one wants to be president of the country, absolutely you can do it. It will be the number one goal in your life, and you will have watered and fed it and all of this, and eventually it's bound to happen. And so in this birth or the next, like that. So the question is, in what direction are my desires oriented? And here, for peace, to be at peace, that means harmonious. That means in alignment, in balance, in the totality. And so my desires would want to be in the direction of peace. Purification of the body, purification of the thoughts, purification of the life, simplification of the life, learning how to breathe properly. For example, learning how to focus the mind, how to meditate, how to keep the mind focused and single-pointed like this. These are all very, very beneficial desires. Now, obviously, when you achieve the thing, then you don't need the desire anymore, and you let go of it. Dear Swami Premanandaji Maharaj, right here next to Brianji, he says, and I heard this a few times while I was with him, he says, actually, the last desire, there is a last desire, and interestingly enough, it's the desire to be free of desires. Really, genuinely coming into the place where I don't want something for me, I don't need something for me. I'm free. I'm like Peace Pilgrim said. I am timeless, ageless, and in radiant health, and so I don't need something for me. My desires are in the direction of may all be free, may all be happy, may all find that joy which is at the center. May all find that peace embodied and live in it. And these desires will also bear fruit, dear ones. Honest to God, they will. Okay, let's come to the last of these purifications.
Number 4 is purification of motives. Obviously, your motive should never be greed or self-seeking or the wish for self-glorification. You shouldn't even have the selfish motive of attaining inner peace for yourself. To be of service to your fellow humans must be your motive before your life can come into harmony.
It's a hard one. Life isn't easy. In a way, there's a simplicity, and there's a simplicity to the path. This is laid out very simply. Doesn't mean that it's easy, because we discover a lot along the way that needs our attention, that's asking for our attention and for love, and it's hard to get at because the habitual natures are very, very strong. So there's this beautiful quote from Lao Tzu: "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." this is one of the quotes that I brought forward to myself. The first step of pilgrimage, the coast to coast pilgrimage. It was, okay, here's the first step. And so we would say that to have the motive of inner peace is absolutely a good first, second, third, fourth step like this. Nothing wrong with it. I want to be at peace. I want to be happy. Nothing wrong with that motive. We will find that as we take our steps, we'll get stuck if we hold this as the motive. Jesus says, for example, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall know peace, like this. And this is what our dear Peace Pilgrim is saying here as well. And that is, as I rise up within myself, now, in order to continue to make steps forward, I will need to shift this motive to benefit, being of benefit. I'll get stuck if I say all I want is my inner peace, because no doubt that will require me to be against others having inner peace, and therefore I won't get it. Yeah?
Yeah.
And so we have to come face to face with this. And the sooner the better. The motive wants to be an open motive. May all be at peace, and may my actions contribute in some way towards this peace, and may I be at peace as well. Of course, even in forgiveness practices, we start by forgiving ourselves and then all, or we forgive all and then ourselves. But it wants to be a unity in terms of the motive. And this is what Dear Peace is sharing. And when this is the motive, now we're in our next session tomorrow morning. We'll come back in and gather and speak of the relinquishments, and these are the next steps. And we'll see how this leads into the relinquishments. Okay. These three thoughts, desires, motives, they're very closely related, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're very closely linked, and it's beneficial to see that they're supporting each other. So it's not like I purify the thoughts and then the desires and then the motives. It's not in an order. It's being aware of these three and how they're interrelated and really working with them. If I, for example, have the desire of others, even if it's just one other, their happiness or freedom, then that's going to go a long way towards purifying the thoughts. Okay, yeah. Yes, dear.
A question about guilt, I guess. And you've kind of touched on it, but I think from my perspective, like, guilt is one of the chief obstacles in living a spiritual life or living a religious life. So in this context, it arises as she's setting this very lofty bar, and the guilt programming comes, well, I can never achieve this, and so why even bother trying? So that program, right?
Well, and that's also those same reactive thoughts bubbling up. Don't think them. Again, in a way, it's very, very simple.
Yeah.
It's not easy. They're not beneficial.
Yeah.
They're incorrect because you're eternal. You are already what you seek. You are already full, complete. You are Satchidananda. You are existence absolute, knowledge absolute, bliss absolute. You are that already. What's happened is we've gotten caught up. And we're needing to remove that which has caused us to get bound up. And all of this is about opening, isn't it? Opening. We just shared this guidance on forgiveness and untying knots, and we've tied so many knots, and the psyche has become so complex, so interrelated, so reactive, so loud. It has an opinion about everything. And one of the opinions is very much in this whole self-deprecation thing. I'm not worthy. I can't do it. But that's completely patently incorrect. You you have all of the potential within you, and step by step, we work to reveal it within ourselves. And this is part of why we need to and want to engage in forgiveness practices, self-forgiveness practices, in order to help to transcend, to get beyond some of these perceived limitations. So it's not, and frankly, from a practical standpoint, to find, even just intellectually, just consciously, to find the separation between I and my mind, and be able to relate to, this is the mind that is this way. The mind is doing this. The thoughts are coming this. And as much separation as we get, and it will help us, at some point we'll have this experience where we actually find that we're observing the mind. I mean, practically, really. That there's a separation that comes in where, and viva la separation, it's just coming into order, coming into alignment. Oh, okay, thank you. That's a great question. And so we've come to the close of today's session on the purifications.